Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and it's Women's History Month, and I'm here today to talk to you about Switch, the 1991 movie. That is how old this movie is. And I remember watching this on television as a little kid. And then after I watched it, I completely forgot about it. And probably about, I don't know, like anywhere between 16 to close to 19, 20 years. I think I tried to remember it, but I couldn't. So I looked it up on the internet. And back in those days, the internet, even though it was advanced, it wasn't as, advanced as it is now, especially with AI and stuff like that. So I constantly just kept trying to search for. I would type in phrases, nothing could come up. And I didn't know who none of the stars were in the movie. All I could remember was a man dies, God turns him into a woman, he has a baby, or she has a baby, and then after having the baby, she dies. That's all I could remember. And then I think at some point in time back in the day, I actually did find it and then forgot about it again. But then I was watching Modern Family, and in the episode, there was a woman who was harassing Phil. She worked with him and she kept trying to take all his deals, and she pretended like he pushed her in the bushes. And I remember thinking to myself, this woman is hilarious. Like, who is she? And not only that, but like, she's older, but she looks good and everything. So I'm like, who is this woman, right? And so when I looked her up, she's Ellen Barkin. And so as I'm looking through, like, her Wikipedia page, I see the movie Switch. And I'm like, hold up, this sounds a little bit familiar. 'Cause I think I had found it a long time ago, but then forgot about it again. And so as I'm looking up, like, the description of the movie, bam, it's her. It's the actress who was in the movie Switch. I could not believe it and everything. And she still works till this day. But she's mostly a movie actress and stuff, and done a couple of stuff in television. She was in Animal Kingdom, that was on CBS, that ran for like 2 seasons, and something else. And other than that, she's made appearances in like television, but she's mostly relegated to movies. And so honestly, the only things I've ever seen her in was that episode of Modern Family and Switch. But she is a hilarious actress and she is really good. And and like, so I just couldn't believe that episode of Modern Family made me like realize, oh, these two people are one and the same and stuff. And so this movie was directed and written by Blake Edwards. And I've been grappling for the longest time of when exactly I'm going to talk about this movie. And I'm going to do it in March of like Women's History Month, or if I'm going to do it in June for Pride Month, because of the simple fact, a man dies and literally turns into a woman and like has a child. Also, there are slight LGBT themes in this movie. However, I decided I'm going to talk about this for Women's History Month because of the simple fact that while it does have LGBT themes in it, they're kind of rushed and not really represented in the best terms, you know what I'm saying? And like also when it comes to LGBT people and somebody being a one gender and turning into another gender, it's always a choice. And in this movie, it is not a choice. It was something forced upon him. And then, he had to live his life out as a woman. And then, then there's that relationship with that woman that was not handled very well and not really explained too well. And then there's that relationship with the man. And I just kind of felt like, this isn't probably the best thing to represent, pride and stuff like that. So I'll do it for Women's History Month. Why not? And so, this movie received, mixed reviews. And I can see why it received mixed reviews. The problem is Because of the subject matter. Okay, here's the thing, it was made in 1991. Not exactly a great time to depict the movie about a man turning into a woman, and then that woman having a baby by like another man. You gotta remember the time era we was in. In the early 90s, they did not like the LGBT. Not only that, but women were kind of still relegated to, oh, you're just a secretary, or oh, you play like the dumb ditzy blonde, or like um, you're 40, so you can't work no more, or something like that. You can't be in movies no more. So they was still treating women kind of badly. And you gotta remember, this was coming off the 80s. So this movie still has that smash mouth, in your face, unapologetic, a little bit loosey goosey with like the script. And that's the problem with like the movie, because it's like, they hit you hard and fast paced and loosey goosey with the script. They don't explain the important things that this movie is trying to convey. This movie, it should have done a better job of, okay, you're a man and you act very much like a man. And like, you are like, what's that word they call it? What's a man who's really perverted towards a woman, and sexualizes them and looks down on them and treats them like crap and cheat on them? I can't think of the word right now. Is it emasculate? I can't think of it right now. But anyway, men who treat women like crap and cheat on them. And, like, it doesn't really show like a chauvinistic pig trying to understand why women hate him and stuff like that. Because the whole point of the movie is, in order for him to go to heaven, he has to find one female that likes him. And every woman and every female hates his guts. And so he never really learns what it truly means to be a woman and what really they all go through. The thing about this movie, because, is not really explained about, they do the whole show don't tell, which is something you're supposed to do in movies anyway. But like, they'll show it, but it's made kind of for laughs, and then you'll get kind of like a speech about why it's wrong, and then they kind of move on to like the next thing. But then people are constantly doing that same thing that he's getting on to men about, that he used to do, like catcalling, trying to sleep with women, trying to lure them, like, stuff like that. I just feel like they didn't fully go there. And that's the problem, because this movie has potential. That's the thing. It has a lot of potential. But they don't go there because they're too scared. Same thing with the LGBT things. They do address, men hitting on him and stuff like that, and his best friend sleeping with him. But it's like they don't really go there, like, if you know what I'm saying. Because this character who gets turned into a woman, he is slightly homophobic. I can't talk. Homophobic himself. And so he doesn't really learn no kind of lesson from that. And so, or she doesn't, you know what I'm saying. And so, like, and not only that, but like, something happens towards the end, like I said before, with him and his best friend, and it's kind of like, it just kind of happens and she goes with it, but it's kind of like, but why did she go with him? Like, did she secretly have feelings for him, or like all this time? Or it's kind of like, well, people just not accept that she's a woman dating another woman, because this is the early 90s. And that's the problem with the movie. It's in the decade it's made in, the early 90s, coming off the 80s, where women were still treated slightly bad and looked down on, and the LGBT was like hated, you know what I'm saying? So that had a lot going against this movie. And so, I sympathize with the writer and stuff of trying to make it work, but it should be rebooted in today's modern times and really sell a message. You know what I'm saying? of like, here's this straight person that's really straight, a man. Sorry about that, my camera died. So you have this man who's misogynistic and everything. That's the word I was thinking about. And like, and treats women like crap. And he's a real sleazeball. Like, it would be better if they would show how adjusting to becoming a woman is very difficult. Like the everyday life of being a woman and everything. Like they mention some things like shaving legs and stuff like that, but you don't see it. You don't see the difficulty of like her adjusting to this new womanhood and everything. Except for walking in high heel shoes, which is the running gag for the entire movie. She can't walk in heels and everything from beginning to end. And so that's the only difficult part of like being a woman for him. And they should have done more. They also should have like capitalized on him being slightly homophobic, because like there's a scene where he's with a woman and he really wants to do it because it's been like a fantasy, but something prevents him from wanting to do it. Is either disgust or he feels bad for using her, because yeah, they will show an instance where he will use a woman but then he stops because he starts to feel bad. But I'm just kind of like, they need more of that. Also, like, let's say he's not disgusted by being with a woman, right? Because like, how is he gonna date a woman in 1991? You know what I'm saying? Or her, you know what I'm saying? Like lesbians, were hated on back in the early 90s and stuff. And so that would have been difficult. So she would have to date like a man. But he's slightly homophobic and don't like men. So what the heck is he gonna do? You know what I'm saying? And so a movie made in today's time would be a heck of a lot better than trying to tell this back in the day. Because even at the end of the movie, when she finally dies and everything, God, they ask her, yeah, I said they for a reason when it comes to God, because like God is like in this version two people, a man and a woman. And so like they ask her, okay, do you want to spend eternity as a man and a woman? And she's all like, I'm thinking about it. Like, I actually like being a woman. But why? Throughout the entire movie, we saw her hate being a woman. So what the heck changed? And so like, yeah. So I think this movie should totally be rebooted, and they should make it in more of the modern times, because it's a little bit, well, it was more accepting to be part of the LGBT until recently and everything. But like, to tell you the truth, this is actually a remake of a remake. Apparently they tried this years before, and if you thought like trying to tell like a feminine story and an LGBT story in 1991 was difficult, just wait until you learn about like the other movies this was based off of. And so George Axelrod wrote a play called Goodbye Charlie in 1953. Yes, the 1950s, where people were extremely prejudiced towards black people. So if you know they're prejudiced towards black people, they hated the idea of a man becoming a woman. And so it's about Charlie, who is like, he dies and comes back as a woman and everything. But this wasn't but they had a remake made into that of a movie. In 1964, the movie titled the same thing, Goodbye Charlie, they did the same thing in 1964. In 1964, still hated people, the LGBT, and treated women as though they're like second-class citizens, putting them in the kitchen and everything. Debbie Reynolds, no, I think that's her name, isn't it? Hold on. I think her name is Debbie Reynolds. No, wait. What's that lady's name from? Okay, it's her mother from Star Wars. Carrie Fisher's mother, whoever that is. I think her name is Debbie Reynolds, I think. She was in the 1964 movie. But then, I believe in like the 70s or the 80s, Suzanne Summers was supposed to do like a television show about this, but it didn't make it past the unaired pilot. So they've attempted over and over to get this to work. And apparently, from what the critics said back in the day, that reviewed this movie, like I said before, the 1991 movie got mixed reviews, but this one critic said that, this franchise had just never taken off. They say the play was no good. They say the 1964 movie wasn't that good. And then, of course, there's the unaired pilot that couldn't make it past the pilot stage. And so I don't know if the play is any good, and I don't know if the original movie's any good or not. But this seems to be a franchise that just can't seem to hit its mark. But like I said before, I think because they keep making this movie in the wrong era, they should make it now. Now, there are a bunch of people in this movie I don't recognize, but there are some I recognize now that I had no idea who they were back in the day. Téa Leoni, she has a small role in this movie way before Cher became really, really famous and stuff. And she's one of the girls that knew the guy. The guy is named Steve Brooks, and she has nothing nice to say about him because she hates his guts. I had no idea she was even in this movie. So Perry King, he plays Steve Brooks, and he's kind of like this ad accountant, and just a real sleazeball, right? He just treats women like complete crap, and he uses them, and he sleeps around with them, and he cheats on them, all kinds of stuff, right? Like, he's just the sleaziest of the sleazeballs. And so, but he loves his life and everything. He lives in kind of like one of those penthouse apartments. He has a good job. He plays golf in his office. He has friends at work. And so every woman he's ever met just hates his guts. And so he gets a call from a woman named Margot, who is one of his exes. And apparently she wants him to party with her with two of his other exes, or three, I can't remember which one, to have a menage a trois. And so JoBeth Williams, she plays that of Margot. And so as he's partying in the hot tub with the other two women and everything, she comes on over, and all three women have a plot to murder him. That's how much they hate him and stuff. And so they try to drown him, and they somewhat succeed. Now, it's never really explained why exactly they're trying to drown him, because at this point in time, we don't know the type of person he is. And for the most part, we've never really truly seen him be that sleazeball everybody keeps saying, because they never show flashbacks or him dating somebody prior. They just jump straight to the chase, and this is in the first couple of minutes and stuff. So the women are kind of like, oh my God, I can't believe what we did. We actually did it. I'm all so you're kind of confused as to why these women want to kill this man. Then all of a sudden, you start to hear footsteps in a soggy manner. He survived. They're freaking out. Margot runs to the dresser, grabs a gun, and shoots him 3 times. And so then it cuts to black, and we see a naked Steve walking in purgatory. It's just a black emptiness, right? And 2 people are talking to him, a male and a female. Both of these figures are God. Why they decided to make God into 2 different beings, I have no idea. It's never been explained. And so they tell him, hey, you done some good things in life, but you did a lot of bad stuff too, so you're going to the underground and everything. And so he doesn't want to go there. They're like, all right, fine. If we'll send you back, but if you can find just one woman who likes you, then you get to go to heaven for eternity. So they send him back, and he's in his apartment. He wakes up and he goes brush his teeth. But then there's a long-haired, creepy guy wearing a black trench coat. He is the devil and everything. Now, I didn't recognize him at first, but he was in Highlander Endgame playing Kel. And so So he's talking to both gods and everything. And he's all like, look, this ain't fair. He's gonna find a woman, smoozes her, and she's gonna have lots of nice stuff to say. Make this a challenge. Make him a woman. And it's kind of a no-win situation because he has to find. See, this is the thing. The movie logic makes no sense when you get to the end of the movie. They said that like um there has to be a female that has to like Steve and Steve only. But they didn't say Steve only, but they said Steve. The movie kind of breaks its own rules at the end. So, anyways, next thing you know, after brushing his teeth, he goes to pee and can't pull his junk out to pee. Why? Because he's now a female with blonde hair instead of brown. Played by Ellen Birkin. She is phenomenal in this movie. She's from a New York. She has a New York accent. The two things I've seen her in, she is just hilarious and she is stunning. She actually dated Johnny Depp back in the day, and they're exactly 10 years apart. So she's freaking out. She doesn't understand why she's no longer a he, and she's just screaming at the top of her lungs. This alerts the neighbors, and they get the security guard who works in the hotel to go check on him because he's always having women in there screaming this and that. So she has to lie and everything and talking about, oh yeah, I'm like Steve's sister or something like that. He said I can stay in the apartment. And so she's just walking around in men's clothes. So what else is she gonna wear? You know what I'm saying? And so at some point in time in the movie, which by the way, trying to find this movie online is difficult. I had to do some soul searching. I don't know if I found it on YouTube or Daily Motion or whatever it's called, but if you do find it on streaming, you'll have to pay for it. And this movie is so old, you shouldn't have to pay for it. And so, next thing you know, she has to figure out how the heck she's gonna, live and work and this and that. Well, because Steve knew so much about, people and all their dark secrets, she pretty much blackmails everybody. So, at some point in time, she heads over to Margot's place. And so she's basically talking about I'm Steve reincarnated in the body of a woman and you're gonna help me out or I'm gonna tell the police and blah blah stuff like that. And so he's all like, you're gonna teach me everything there is to be about a woman, and I'm gonna borrow some of your clothes and stuff like that. But we never get to see Margot teach her how to be a woman. But we do see her being finding it very difficult to walk in high heels. She heads over to her job that used to be Steve's job, and she talks to Harvey. She talked to him on the phone and told him because she keeps talking about, I'm Steve, but he won't believe her and everything. So when she goes there, of course, I'm trying to think of the dude's name. Jimmy Smits plays that Walter. And so Walter just doesn't believe that Steve is in the body of a woman. And of course, he hits on her. And so do other people at the job. And so, when it comes to the boss, she pretty much tells him, blackmailing just to get the job. No identification, no resume, no nothing. They just give her the job. And when she heads back to, the apartment, she has to blackmail the owner of the apartment because is it an apartment or is it a hotel? One of those fancy type things, kind of like in Pretty Woman. So anyway, and so she has to blackmail him, in order to stay in the apartment and everything. After that, she makes her rounds trying to find every female that she knows in person, on the phone. She talks to the secretary that works for her, that used to work for Steve, and the secretary's crying. And so she's all like, this is great. You liked him, right? He's dead. And she's like, no, these are tears of joy that he's dead because I hated him. So needless to say, she cannot find a single soul that used to like Steve. So he is screwed and everything. So if he passes away, she will go to the underworld and everything. And so, like, while at her job, she has to get this deal with, I think, this perfume lady and stuff, so that the perfume lady will take them on as agents or something like that, right? And the hotel lady, not hotel lady, the perfume lady, she is a lesbian and everything. And so, now Steve is calling herself Amanda, as in a man, duh, get it? So it's kind of hard because you're like, if I was back a man, I would just like seduce you, but can't because she's a lesbian. So she does it anyways, right? And the lady is interested. And so when it comes for them to actually do it, which, yeah, there is a girl on girl kiss early on because Amanda kisses Margot and everything. But anyway, we get a monologue and we actually get to see what happens. Amanda's all like, this is my fantasy to see two women do it. But then something just happened. I couldn't go through with it. I wanted to throw up. I wouldn't even let her touch me and everything. And when she tried to kiss me, I just kept backing away. And so when she tells Margot this, Margot's all like, because you're homophobic, that's why. And she's like, nah, because like when Amanda tried to talk to Walter, she's all like, I'm Steve. He's all like, and he's like, I don't believe you. But then when Amanda sees a hot woman, she says some like, inappropriate stuff. And Walter's like, oh God, you're not a gay, are you? And she's all like, then she uses a really outdated term to mention trans women. So anyway, so she's still trying to get with like the perfume lady. And she tells her, like, "Oh, I used to be a man, this and that." So the perfume lady thinks, oh, it must be like a trans woman or something like that. And so she's still into her, but it's just not working out. Then an incident happens where a bouncer tries to break up them having an argument, and the bouncer punches Amanda and the perfume lady. Some reason, for whatever reason, the perfume lady agrees to, like, work with like Amanda's company. But like Amanda does something unexpected. She literally tells the perfume lady, hey, look, I'm just not into you for some reason. Like I've been sent to like use you to like, get this deal and everything. And this is the only time in the movie Amanda slash Steve has some like, feels guilty for the way he used to treat women and stuff. Like, what I'm saying? Like he doesn't want to use this woman and lead her on, what I'm saying? And so I wish we could have seen more of that in the movie. And so throughout the rest of the movie, Amanda is like, seeing what it's like to be a woman when men are constantly hitting on you. And she's always having to defend herself. She's always punching guys in the gut and stuff like that. When she's walking in the street, she's getting catcalled. When she's at the bar, guys are trying to buy her drinks. She even has to like, tell like Walter, I'm not into you, and this other guy at her job as well. And so, okay, so it's like, okay, cool. So we are getting to see what it's like when a woman is totally harassed by like a man. And but I wanted to see more, like, the day-to-day life of like a woman and stuff, right? And it gets to the point where she's just tired of having long hair. So she goes to the barber and gets like a very short haircut, a really short man, butch looking hairstyle. Thing that makes her seem kind of like a tomboy, or in nowadays kind of like a non-binary person or a person who's transitioning or something like that, right? And so she's with Walter and she's just like, screw, we're playing some basketball. And the thing I love about Ellen in this movie is that she acts just like a dude. Especially when they're like playing basketball. But all this like hanging out with Walter is making him come on more to her and stuff. And so when her and Walter are at the bar, that same guy who hit on her the night before tried to like, start some mess with her and everything. So her and Walter get into a huge fight with the entire bar. And like, Amanda's just whooping this guy's behind and everything. Well, her and Walter are like drunk. And when they go back to Amanda's place, She lets him sleep in the bed with her and takes his pants off so, he can be more comfortable in the bed. But he's still trying to like mess with her. And she's like, no, stop it and everything. And so, like, this should have been a big red flag for her because, she knows exactly what's probably going to happen because she has done this before as like a man. And so why she would let like, Walter sleep with her in the bed is beyond me. When she wakes up in the morning, she sees that Walter's underwear are off and you just see his huge butt cheeks. And this is the part of the movie that is very complicated. See, while this is going on, prior to the drunken bar fight and everything, the devil came to pay Amanda a visit and is all like, you would love to spend eternity with me and everything. And have you ever heard the movie Rosemary Baby? Amanda freaks out. It's like, no, I don't do that with men and stuff like that. And you ain't putting no baby in me. And she just freaks completely out, right? Now back to Walter and the complications that happens in this part of sleeping with him in the bed. Not sleeping, but after realizing why his underwear is off, he's all like, because we did it last night. Amanda freaks out. It's all like, you assaulted me and everything. He's all like, no, I didn't. You agreed to it and you enjoyed yourself. And she's like, I don't remember that. He's like, you don't remember because we were both drunk and you were super drunk. But he says that she consented and they did it. Amanda was so drunk that she doesn't remember what happened. So, who do you believe? Because we never got to see none of the love making. And that's a crucial point that the movie should have shown. They should have shown what happened between these two. But they probably didn't because they were probably worried people would freak out and everything. And so they're going back and forth, where Amanda's telling her, do you know how many women are sexually assaulted when being drunk and all this other stuff and blah, blah, blah. And so they're constantly going at it. And then the police show up because the murder weapon and stuff like that. So then this is where the movie takes a little bit more of an awkward situation because did they use protection? Did they not? Was he wrong for doing her, even though he said she consented and they was both drunk? And when most people are drunk, they are still themselves. That's the thing. It's the alcohol that brings more of them out, more of their personality. So if the alcohol, if what Walter says is true, and Amanda was pissed drunk and everything, and she consented, does that mean that Steve was slightly bi and just never really knew it? Or was it because he was such great friends with Walter, he just didn't care? Or was it because he was super horny and just didn't care? We will never know the answer to this. But Margot is tired of Amanda. Amanda uses her for her money and like make her buy all these clothes and high heels and stuff like that. And so she wants to get rid of Amanda. So she plants the murder weapon in Amanda's place. But by this time, the police have actually found Steve's body. It's in the water tied up. Because when the women got rid of him, they just dumped him in the water. Now, this doesn't make no sense. Because we saw Steve in his regular body when he woke up in the morning to brush his teeth while the devil was in the room. And so, so how can the body be in two different places? I have no idea. This is where things take an even more interesting turn. So Amanda decides to go to church and talk to a pastor, talking about how I'm a man in a woman's body. He thinks she's crazy and calls the police. Because I made a mistake. The police never showed up at the apartment. They are looking for the murder suspect, stuff like that. But then, the priest called the cops thinking she's crazy. She goes to court. They ask her, you claim to be Steve's sister, but there's no identification, no nothing. And we found the murder weapon in your apartment. And so who are you? And she's like, all right, look, I'm gonna tell you the truth. So she says, I used to be Steve, died, came back as a woman. They think she's crazy. Walter is now for the first time believing Amanda / Steve. And it's kind of like, hold up. All throughout the movie, Walter never believed Amanda, but now all of a sudden at the court trial, he believes her and even tells the judge, I'm telling you the story that she's telling. Like, this is Steve reincarnated. So does that mean Walter is secretly gay? The movie never explains. But then 5 months later, we see a very pregnant Amanda at the mental hospital and everything, the mental ward. And Walter goes in to check on her and stuff. And he tells her, look, you're 5 months along, just have an abortion because they ran some tests on you and you have diabetes and your stress levels up high. They say if you have this baby, you will die. This is where the movie takes an interesting turn. First of all, Amanda/Steve is pregnant with Walter's baby. That's a movie all on its own. But then Amanda says, no, I don't want to have an abortion. She's like, I don't know what it is, but I want to keep this baby. You have no idea what it feels like to be a woman and to have life inside of you. We never get to experience this in the movie because 5 months had jumped ahead and we never get to see this revelation and everything. So then, oh wait, I completely forgot about this point. So after the mental ward and everything, Walter tells, Amanda that, look, you want to keep this child, all right, fine. But I want to be the father, which means we're going to have to go old school. We're going to have to get married and stuff. And Amanda just kind of looks at him and just kind of like, okay. And then you see them at a church and getting married and they're like, kiss your bride. And she gives him like a peck and a very awkward one. And it's just kind of like, hold up. Steve is very much straight. Why would he want to marry Walter for? It's never explained. Like, it's that fast-paced loosey-goosiness with the plot. And so it really does make you wonder if Walter really is secretly gay. But what about Steve? Like, why would Steve, or Amanda, I should say, go along with this? You know what I'm saying? And so, because you never saw no hint of that whatsoever. And so then here comes the birth. A couple more months, I don't know, the baby came out maybe premature a couple months later. But anyway, Amanda gives birth. And when she looks at the baby, she's all like, I think the baby likes me. And then all of a sudden, Amanda dies. Because if a female likes Steve, then he dies and goes to heaven. But the thing is like, how do they know this newborn baby likes her mother? When a baby is born, first of all, they can't even see because their eyes are closed and their eyes are trying to adjust to the light. So they're in like a lot of pain. They're screaming, they're crying, and they don't know who the heck they're even looking at. So how are they going to be even happy? You know what I'm saying? But like I said, this is the fast-paced movie logic. And not only that, but the daughter supposedly likes Amanda, not Steve, though. You know what I'm saying? That's what the actual rules were. So anyways, and so like 4 or 5 years later, we see Walter with like the daughter and everything. They go to the gravesite, and on the gravesite it says something along the lines like, I can't remember what it says because I'm not at the computer right now, but they address the fact that this was like both a man and a woman and very much loved and this and that. And then God asked Amanda, like, do you want to be a man or a woman in eternity? And Amanda can't decide because she now likes being a female and everything. And like, it's confusing because we never got to see this point in the movie. All throughout the movie, Amanda hated being a woman and wanted to be a man and could not adjust to being a woman. So now this movie has been referenced by Mystery Science Theater 3000 over and over again. But I've never watched that. However, I have watched Johnny Bravo. And so there's an episode because Johnny's misogynistic as well and hits on women. And one day he just wakes up and turns into like a woman and everything. And he's totally okay with that. And it reminded me so much of like this movie. Like I said before, a good movie, a funny movie and everything. but it just didn't go there far enough because it had the potential to do it, but for whatever reason, because it was the early 90s, they chickened out because they got too scared and everything. And it's quite a shame because them not exploring Steve accepting being a woman and adjusting to being a whooping a woman really hurt this movie. Them not explaining the whole LGBT themes in this movie really hurt this movie because it has an unevenness to it and stuff. And this is exactly why I feel like this movie should be made in modern times. They should just make it to where, it's Steve, he dies, turns into a woman. We find out why women hate him and everything. Then we get to see the struggle of him adjusting to being a woman, but set it back in the old days to where it's kind of like Steve is kind of like crap. Like, I can't date a woman because people will ostracize me. So I'm going to have to date a man, but I don't want to date a man. So they're going to have to grapple with that. So yeah, it would make more sense if this movie were made today and everything. So I think audience will be more, so some people will be more accepting of like the themes that they have in this movie. But of course, what's really interesting is that back in the day when this movie was made in 1991 and 1964 and the play coming out in 1950 something, if it was made today, people would call it woke. They would say, oh, there's an agenda. You trying to shove this down our throat and all this other crap. But you didn't hear people, well, some people probably said some things similar to that. But think about it. Like, if this movie was made today, they would say stuff along those lines about the whole agenda and the wokeness and all the gender bending and stuff like that. And it's just kind of like, so I don't know, if they were to make it today, it will have an uphill battle between those anti-woke mob type people. But I think it will be praised amongst like women in the LGBT community if they were to make it today and actually really explore those themes a lot stronger. And so, yeah, that's exactly why I didn't want to upload this for like Pride Month, because the LGBT themes in here are not handled very smoothly and everything and don't make a whole lot of sense because they was too scared to like explore it. And also, it was never Steve's choice. And the thing about the LGBT community, when they decide, this is how they're gonna live their life, they're gonna accept who they are, they're gonna like tell the world, and stuff like that. It's always their choice. You know what I'm saying? Happy Women's History Month, everybody. All right. Well, I'll talk to you later. Bye.